So, good
So,
morning, everyone. So, we have a session of Plenary 2, which is represented by Athira, Miss Athira, as research scholar, Center for the Study of Social System, Jawaharlal Nehru University. So, her topic is Doing Digital Ethnography, Some Observations as a Feminist and Women Researcher. Now, over to you, Miss Athira.
Let me
thank
first
you.
introduce her formally.
Okay, now, Alvira, please.
Thank you, Yusra. Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. We are honored to have Ms. Athira BK as our plenary speaker today. She, as mentioned by Yusra Siddiqui, she is a research scholar at CSSS, Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi. Her research encapsulates interactions among body ornamentation, faith, gender, caste, and digitally mediated aesthetics in the context of South Asian Muslim brides. She has also worked with organizations such as the World Anthropological Union, Indian Anthropological Association, and has published on the themes of digital media, gender, and religion. Today, she is going to present on doing digital ethnography, some observations as a feminist and a woman researcher. Now, I'd like to invite her to present it. Over to you, Athira.
Thank you. I hope I'm audible.
Yes,
Okay,
you are.
Yes, yes.
Yes.
okay, thank you. Uh, so, I just submitted my thesis in November 2024. So now I am waiting for the results. So, my doctoral research is based on the practices of bridal ornamentation among a Muslim group in Kerala. It deals with gender practices, body, and religion among the brides. And I had conducted my pilot study and fieldwork between 2021 and 2023. The digital media platforms have been of great assistance throughout this period, right from the onset of the study amidst the COVID curbs in the state. I was able to identify and connect with interlocutors who are inside and outside the country with the help of these platforms. However, as observed by Zacharias and Arthus, digitally mediated ethnographic works cannot conceptualize the category of gender without addressing the ecologies and the sensual and imaginative extensions of gender encryptions and gender selves facilitated by these spaces. I'll try to map some of my observations from the field as a feminist and woman researcher while conducting a study which adhered to a feminist perspective. I shall begin with a broad idea of digital ethnography and come to the core questions on gendered spaces and digital ethnography. So,
Shall
excuse
I
me.
share your presentation?
Yes, please do, please do. Yes,
Is it visible?
yes, it is visible. I think we can go to the next slide now. Yes, the next slide. Yes, thank you. So, to begin with the definition of digital ethnography, I believe that in spite of all the open ended and prescriptive definitions, defining a term or trajectory such as digital ethnography largely depends on our own critical backgrounds, interests, and engagements with the digital. The initial focus on digital media in disciplines such as sociology or anthropology, especially in the late 90s and early 2000s, were limited to an attempt to theorize the digital society or applying ethnographic methods to understand those digital media aided reproduction of structural inequalities. The case was more or less similar in the Indian context as well. We had works which dealt with the advent of computer technologies as part of the economic reforms in 1990s. Later, we had works on social media, and of course, now we have reached a stage where any discussion on digital society will be considered incomplete without a mention on artificial intelligence. So now I would come to our major concern, which is conducting digital ethnography or its former versions, such as cyber ethnography or online ethnography, through a feminist perspective. So, if we have to think of literature from other contexts, scholars had responded to the question of ethnographic purity when they began incorporating methods of digital ethnography in their research. Due to this, early online scholars were quite particular about adopting mixed methods as a way of communicating the legitimacy of their work. For example, there was a study on lesbian cafe in Atlanta by Shelley Correll, where she conducted her online participant observation and conversations along with in-person interviews. Recently, we can see efforts to document digital media practices, especially those studies on social media and virtual interactions since 2010. Belladic's work on digital qualitative methods, which was published in 2012, is an example. And now we have works by Sarah Pink and other authors. If we come to the context of India, we have examples like Vinita Johnson's work on digital literacy in India and similar works which explored the digital media spaces. It is quite evident that later the pandemic became a critical moment, just as in the case of my own work. At a philosophical level, a feminist way of doing ethnography considers a researcher's engagement in the cultural experience, where there is a contextual shaping of research methods and strategic use of visible and invisible tools based on a commitment to paying attention to power hierarchies. Similarly, reflecting on the power hierarchies within the research context is something proponents of feminist ethnography would advocate. And in these processes, researchers are often urged to engage with disciplines such as post-colonial studies, disability studies, queer studies, sensorial studies, and other frameworks. Broadly, when we seek possible ways of doing feminist ethnography digitally, there is a need to focus on the digital ecologies to delineate structural factors involved in the digital ecology and digital infrastructure, and also to document those digital selves which symbolize those moments of transition in the history, and also the formation of online subjectivities at different stages of ethnography and ethnographic writing. So now I would like to provide a brief account on how I utilized methods of digital ethnography in my own study and how my religious, gender, and linguistic identities played a critical role in these processes. I would argue that digitally mediated ethnographic techniques put forth the possibility of an ethnographic convergence based on a collaboration between the researcher, interlocutors, and fellow researchers. I would also argue that the longitudinal conversations with the interlocutors, in my case, the brides, and those digitally circulated narratives have assisted me in discerning how the group aspirations and desires are signaled through the objects and process of bridal ornamentation. I could also understand how the young Malayali Muslim women control their representations on digital media platforms through different techniques. As I have already mentioned, platforms such as the WhatsApp, IMO, Instagram, etc., they have been of assistance in sharing contact details, geographical location, and in facilitating prompt communication with the interlocutors. The random conversations based on a status, post, or story shared by the informants have helped me to develop rapport. I'm not talking about friendship, rapport with the interlocutors, which I consider as a prerequisite for in depth interviews and longitudinal engagements with them. I had used digital media devices as a replacement for the traditional note, field notebooks to an extent, where the Notes app on my phone helped me to take note of the occurrences during the bridal ornamentation. And of course, I had informed the bride and her family that I will be taking note of these processes. I did that without interfering. I would say I tried to do that without interfering with any interaction happening there. As observed by Sunderland, incorporating gadgets as part of our ethnographic toolkit can aid us in moving beyond essentializing face to face interactions as the real stuff in social life. Similarly, the images I had clicked during the wedding rituals have allowed me to engage with the minute aspects of ornamentation during the interviews, which were held after the wedding. I had also conducted interviews with interlocutors, which extended till September 2023, with interlocutors from different regions, including a bride who shifted to Dammam after her wedding in August 2023. I'm sorry. uh, so, to further explain how I try to delineate the experiences, gender identities, and gender performances, I would bring in four cases here where digital technologies played the role of either a research tool or an analytical category or an object of analysis. The first case is about how I, as a woman researcher, conducted woman to man interviews. So, carrying a mobile phone has allowed me to collect contact details of interlocutors immediately and to connect with them at a convenient time to seek requests for in person meetings in an informal way. From waiting for months to meet a male informant to escaping from male informants have alerted me the need to make personal safety a prerequisite. This included the compulsion I had faced from a male photographer to talk to him over a call at night, and a designer boutique staff in Kozhikode who was more interested in discovering my personal information rather than sharing the details about bridal ornament I was shown to WhatsApp. Secondly, my gender identity and identity as a researcher from a non-university in Delhi have helped me to digitally document visuals and sounds from the field. My identity as a non-Muslim researcher and an outsider from the perspective of the regional identity, it has allowed me to access those women-only spaces and obtain information and explanations for things, as in the case of concepts such as mahram or na-mahram, which I was not familiar with, and they were quite happy to provide me more and more information on these things. However, the same factors have led me to have to receive warnings against not sharing their images or putting up their images or any other documents in my thesis. So I consider this as the the interlocutors, especially the brides, claiming their right regarding how they want themselves to get represented. And I think I consider this as ensuring rights and voice of the research, which feminist ethnography adheres to. Thirdly, similar to what Wellman observed in her study based on whaling practices and kinship norms in Iran, the notion of mahram and accompanying restrictions become a matter of context, which are contingent upon factors like trust and demands of living situations. It is their technical knowledge for digitally documenting the weddings which allowed the male photographers, which who are considered to be namahram, to access these spaces of ornamentation. I could also observe how the requirement of having digital knowledge and digital documentation have made women from the same community to pursue their career on photography, along with compelling the community members to hire them, which is new in the region. The fourth point is regarding how I attempted to do an analysis of digital media content related to my interlocutors and the field through a feminist semiotics, where I try to decipher meanings and verbal and visual signs as a way of explaining not only gender hierarchies, but also class, caste, and other elements of hierarchies and distinctions. So, to sum up, the last 2 decades have witnessed several changes in the association between digital media and ethnographic practice. Now, we broadly understand digital ethnography as those data gathering methods which are mediated by computer mediated communication. Something which began as blogs, online focus groups, digitally mediated field notes, and particular participant observation is being updated constantly now. Rather than creating a strict demarcation between digital ethnography and analog ethnography, which is called as in person or traditional ethnography, I would argue that a combination of methods may assist the researcher to revise and reassess the data at the various stages of research, as in the case of collection of data, analysis, and interpretation of data in an improved way with the help of real time information and improved collaborative environments. Rather than evading the changes happening in the field, I believe feminist scholars should encourage transparency and reflect on their social location, gender identities, and how their social location are facilitating, interfering with, or constraining their research trajectory. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Athira, for such a thought-provoking and insightful presentation. It was truly enriching to listen to your perspectives, and I'm sure it must have sparked some meaningful conversations over here. As I can
Thank
see, there's a
you.
question by Yusra Siddiqui. How does your identity as a feminist and women researcher shape your observations and interpretations in digital spaces?
Okay. So I think in the last section, that is what I discussed. So it has always been complex. So there were situations where my gender identity, uh, it facilitated me to access certain spaces. So when a bride is getting ready, or there are women only spaces in a house, there are women only spaces. So I could access these spaces because I am a woman researcher. So it was helpful that way. But as I had mentioned, the case with what happened with the male photographer, there were also instances where I had to leave informants from my list so that I can, proceed with other things. So that has also happened. And I think she has also asked me about my identity as a feminist researcher. So yeah, so it's feminist ethnography. It's about, it is quite difficult to define the trajectory of being a feminist researcher, because you're always working on new things, and you are trying to respond to be trying to situations in a sensitive way. So as I mentioned, I was told by my interlocutors that I should not be posting their images anywhere, or I should not be using them in my thesis. So that is a way of doing feminist ethnography, where you respect the voice of your informant, your interlocutors, and let them have a voice. Basically, having that is the hierarchy which we try to uh, kind of disrupt, where the researcher is considered to be in the superior position, and the research is and we know, Indian cases, when we talk about feminist researchers, it has always been led by some sort of activist philosophies. Activists, I would say, action oriented researchers were there. So most of the time, these university researchers, they'll go and work with women who are from marginalized sections. So in such context, of course, the hierarchy was like they were considered to be ignorant, or they were considered to be not having a lot of voice and all. But in my case, it was quite evident right from the onset, that because these were young brides, and so I had to obey many of their rules. So yeah, so that is how I would say I tried to negotiate with my identity as a feminist and woman researcher in the field. Yeah,
Right. The field has its own dynamics, and being a women researcher even adds more to it. Thank you for your
absolutely.
insight. I would like to thank you, Athira, formally, because unfortunately we are running short of time, so I cannot even post my own questions. Another technical session is in the queue. Thank you
Yes.
so much for this meaningful discussion. Thank you so much. And I would also like to thank Professor Nishad Zaidi for being with us, my rapporteurs Yusra Siddiqui and Priyanka, and the co-chair Farhana Salam. Thank you so much. And for the audience, thank you for being there with us. Thank you. Over to the
Thank
next session now. Is Sajid here?